Hello, everybody. Hey, it's good to see you all. How do you like my new jungle? Yes, I figured we'd be doing a jungle background since we're deep in the jungle with Eric B. Hare again this week. Well, our story has been coming from the book Treasure from the Haunted Pagoda by Eric B. Hare. And as a reminder, the stories all took place over 100 years ago when Elder and Mrs. Hare were working with other missionaries deep in the jungles of Burma, which is now called Myanmar. And they had a station at Onda along the Salween River where they were digging for treasure. But remember, the treasure they were looking for was not the secret treasures that were rumored to be hidden around there, like the silver bricks under the haunted pagoda, which nobody had ever found, or the diamond hidden inside the spirit tree, which they thought they had found at one point. But remember, it just turned out to be a bullet that somebody had shot into the tree. No, no, they were looking for the kind of treasure that is the best treasure. People who don't know Jesus and can fall in love with him. And along the way, they were learning lessons that we've been learning too. Some of those important lessons have been that when something seems scary, often it really isn't when we know what's really going on. So it's important to understand what's happening instead of just becoming scared. But we've also been learning that when something is really truly scary, like a disease or an evil angel pretending to be a demon, even those things we don't need to be afraid of because God is stronger than all of them. Well, one scary thing had happened a lot, at least a few times for Eric Hare when he had been hanging out in the jungles there, and that was ending up trapped in a thunderstorm while hiking around. Do you remember at the end of last week, Elder Hare and Tam Ya-ing, who was one of the Karen evangelists, they had been out trying to hike home and a rainstorm had hit them. Then it became a thunder and lightning storm, and they had to walk through these flooded rice fields in order to find their way all the way home in the dark. They were navigating by the lightning flashes, waiting until the lightning would streak across the sky, and then they'd be able to look around and spot the telegraph poles that they were following as their trail. And then at one point, lightning had cracked across the sky, and Elder Hare had looked about, and he had seen the flooded rice field, water and mud everywhere, telegraph poles even, but he had not seen Tam Ya-ing, for Tam Ya-ing had disappeared. Tam Ya-ing, where are you? Where are you? Elder Hare called out, looking, searching about, feeling about with his hands. Had he drowned? Where had he gone? Another lightning flash. Nothing anywhere. Just water as far as the eye could see. Telegraph poles stretching off towards the other side of the field. And then faintly, after the boom of the thunder had died down, a voice calling, Tada! Tada! Remember, Tada was the Karen word for teacher. That is what they called Elder Hare. And he heard the voice, Tada! Look! Tada, I'm over here. Elder Hare said, what happened? Where did you go? Oh, there's a ditch that goes down the middle of the field. It's deeper, and I had to get across it. How did you get across it, Elder Hare? I don't see a bridge anywhere. No, there's no bridge. Just do what I did. Fall in and swim. And that's what Elder Hare had to do. He just inched his way forward until the water got really deep, let himself fall in, and he swam across until he bumped into Tam Ya-ing. Tam Ya-ing pulled him out on the other side of the ditch, and they kept on walking, the water still up to their waist. And after a while, things became more difficult because instead of just water up to their waist, it became mud up to their waist. Have you ever tried to walk through a mud puddle, even just one that comes up to your ankles? Can you imagine how hard it is to walk through a mud puddle all the way up to your belly button? They were struggling along. They were tired. They weren't cold because in the jungle it didn't get cold even at night, but they were wet to the bone, exhausted, hungry, sleepy. The more they trudged along, the more Eric began to feel like he should just go to sleep, just give up, just sink down in the mud and let it come up to your neck. And if it goes over your head, who cares? And every time the lightning would flash across the sky, Elder Hare began to close his eyes because he didn't even want to look around and see how surrounded they were with mud and water and lightning. But Tam Ya-ing had not closed his eyes when the lightning would flash. And one time after a lightning bolt streaked across the sky, Tam Ya-ing called out, look, Tada, look, I can see it. It's the outline of the mission station up ahead. Tada, Tada, we're almost home. And those words gave Elder Hare the energy, the courage, the strength that he needed to keep on trudging through that mud until they made it home. And Elder Hare learned a lesson that night, and it's a lesson we need to learn too, that when the storms are the worst and the darkness is the darkest and the mud around you seems the deepest, don't worry because you're almost home. But in order to know you're almost home, you have to keep your eyes open. You have to keep watching for the signs, watching for the light to tell you that you're almost home. This is a lesson for us. Life seems hard and difficult right now, doesn't it? Everything is so different. Oh, all the things we're used to doing are just completely topsy-turvy right now. We don't get to go where we want to go. We don't get to do what we want to do. Life is very difficult and different right now, but we should not give up hope because really we are almost home. This world is not our home. Heaven is our home. Elder Hare had so many adventures that reminded him of how powerful God was. And what he treasured the most, though, was not just safety and security that God gave him, but the jewels, the treasure jewels that he found along the way. Because remember, the jewels and treasures he was looking for were people. One of those most treasured jewels for Elder Hare was a young boy by the name of Batwe. Batwe had come to the mission school to be taught there by Elder Hare and Peter and the others when he was 12 years old. And when he signed up for school that first day, Elder Hare was writing his information down in the record book and he said, So, what do we put down for your religion? Are you Buddhist? No, I'm not Buddhist. We don't really go to the temples. Okay, are you a spirit worshiper? We don't really put the rice out on the altars very much. No, no. Well, are you a Christian? Elder Hare asked. And Batwe said, Oh, no, 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 definitely not a Christian. Why don't you just mark me down as heathen? And that's what Elder Hare did. And all that school year, Batwe looked and listened and participated. He came to all the school events, of course, but he also came to all the church events, the meetings on Wednesdays and Friday nights and Sabbaths. And he listened and he watched. And very soon he began looking different in what he did. You know, Batwe was 12 years old, but he had grown up already drinking alcohol and smoking, as most of the children did in those jungle villages from when they were very young. But soon he stopped doing those things and he stopped swearing as all the heathen children did. And he started dressing more nicely. He would wash his clothes and bathe himself. And yet, whenever anybody would say, Hey, Batwe, you've been coming to these mission church meetings for a long time. Would you like to participate more? Would you like to speak up front or maybe say a prayer or help out? He would say, No, 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 no. I'm a heathen. I couldn't do that. You see, God will not listen to my prayers. Batwe was convinced that God wouldn't listen to him. Well, he went home for the summer break from school. When he got back home to his village where he had grown up all of his life, suddenly all the things that had seemed so normal to him were not normal anymore. Do you know, all those other kids in the village, they just seem so different now. They drank and smoked, they chewed betel nut, which made them have this red saliva drooling out of their mouths, and they would spit all the time. They didn't dress cleanly. And Batwe thought to himself, I don't think I'm a heathen. But then what am I? I'm not a Christian. What am I? Well, Batwe spent the summer watching his father's 2 buffaloes, and one day while he was taking care of his buffaloes, Batwe found out who he really was. He had fallen asleep while watching the buffaloes graze. It really wasn't a hard job. He just had to keep them from straying off into the jungle or getting mixed up with other people's buffaloes or maybe, wandering into somebody's garden and eating their vegetables. Batwe had been sitting under a tree and the buffalo had just been standing there grazing, and Batwe's eyes had gotten heavier and heavier, kind of like your parents do on Sabbath afternoon after lunch. And Batwe thought to himself, I think I'm just going to lie down here on the grass. I'll be able to listen, if those buffaloes start to wander off. I'll wake up and. And the next thing Batwe knew, when he did wake up, the sun was low in the sky. He had slept a long time. And what's worse, the buffalo weren't anywhere in sight. He looked around, he called, he got up and ran from here to there and there to here, looking and searching, but couldn't find the buffaloes. Oh, well, he could find buffaloes, all right, but not his buffaloes. All the other children who'd been out taking care of their family's buffaloes were bringing them home through the jungle paths. And he could see all those buffaloes with kids riding on their backs, but not his buffaloes. Where are they? Oh, no, how am I going to find them? He climbed up in an old tree to use it as a search tower and look about. And as he looked from one direction to the other, no, 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 but sign of his father's buffaloes. What would he do if he had lost them, if they had been eaten by tigers? What was he going to do? These buffaloes are so important. And suddenly he heard a voice speaking to him inside of his heart. And the voice said, pray, pray, pray. See, even though Batwe had not really wanted to participate in the meetings going on at the mission church, He had been listening, and the Holy Spirit was talking to him now in his heart. And Batwe replied to the voice, "No, no, I can't pray. I can't pray. I'm not a Christian. I'm heathen." Well, no, I'm not. Well, I'm not heathen. I'm different than the other kids in the village, but I'm not Christian, am I? God won't listen to me. I can't pray. But the voice kept saying, "Pray, pray, pray," until finally Batwe said, "Okay, I'll pray. I'll pray." And Batwe said a very simple prayer. He just said, "God, help me find my buffaloes." Well, as soon as he said it, he had planned to say, "In Jesus' name, amen." But he became so scared after just saying those words. He had spoken to God. Wouldn't God be angry with him? I mean, he wasn't a proper Christian after all, was he? He hadn't, become baptized, and he hadn't started reading his Bible every day. He hadn't done any of those things. God would be angry with him for talking to him. That's what Batwe thought. And Batwe thought, "I'm up here in a tall old dead tree. I bet God is going to send lightning down and strike me right now. I got to get out of here." And Batwe began frantically climbing down the branches all the way down to the ground. And as he dropped to the ground, he heard a sound. And he looked to his right, and there was a buffalo. And he looked to his left, and there was a buffalo. His father's two buffaloes were right there now, at the bottom of the tree, as if they'd been there all along, just waiting for him to come down. And that's when Batwe knew God had heard his prayer. And Batwe realized, I think I am a Christian. I really think I am. And God loves me and he listens to me. And Batwe couldn't wait until that summer was over, when they finally started the next school year, and everybody gathered together there in the school building the first day for their first get together as students. Batwe stood up and said, "I need to tell everyone that this summer I became a Christian." And he told them the story of what had happened with his father's lost buffaloes and the prayer that God had heard. And then he said, "If God would listen to my little prayer before I was a proper Christian even, then I will give my life to him and serve him forever." You can see how such a story would have made Elder Hare's heart just feel so full inside, wouldn't you? That was the entire reason that Elder Hare had come all the way there to the other side of the world, to be able to talk to people and teach them about God. But now you might be wondering, was that the end of Batwe's story? Did Batwe go on to actually serve God? Oh, yes, he did. And you need to hear the next part of that. Because Batwe wanted to serve God so much, he did as well as he could in the remaining years of school there in Onda. And when school was done there, he had plans to go on to the big school, the kind of like the high school or almost a college at Mektila, where the Adventist school was set up to train the Karen people and other people from the country of Burma to become missionaries to their own villages. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted more than anything else to be a mission teacher. But just before Batwe graduated from the Onda mission school along the Salween River, where Elder Hare and Peter taught, there was a depression in the country. A depression means like that the economy was doing very poorly. And so people didn't have jobs. Prices of everything was very expensive. People could hardly afford to get food for themselves. And nobody was hiring anyone to work for them. Nobody wanted to pay any money to anyone. There was no funds now. Batwe couldn't afford to go to the Mektila school. He couldn't even get a job to put his way through school. And he thought and thought about it as he was back home in his village, just taking care of his father's buffaloes again. And he was thinking, I've learned so much about God. God loves everyone so much, and I want to serve him. What can I do? And then he had an idea. And he ran to speak with his father. He said, "Father, do you remember you used to tell me stories about how our ancestors used to live there where the Onda mission station is? Our ancestors who built the old pagoda, and then they cursed it before they moved away. They said, if anyone steals the bricks from under this pagoda, they will be cursed and they will die. Do you remember?" His father said, "Yes, I remember." And Batwe said, "Do you remember that they moved away into the mountains 5 days away from here?" "Yes," his father said. "Yes, that is in the other country now called Siam." Siam was the name back then at that time of Elder Hare story for the country that is now called Thailand. And Batwe said, "Well, they still speak our language there because they are our ancestors, and so their families, their descendants have continued to speak the Karen language, and they have no missionaries there, do they?" No, his father said, I really don't believe they do. There aren't any missionaries that have gone into the mountains of Siam to talk to the Karen people who live there. And Batwe said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and be a missionary to our people in Siam. You will, said his father. How are you going to do that? You don't have any money. You no. How will you eat and how will you survive? No, no, no. I'm not worried, said Batwe. God will take care of me. When I go, the people will invite me in to eat with them, I'm sure. And I will take with me a few things. I will take, I will probably get some medicines from the mission station. I can ask them to give me some medicines and I can take those with me. And I'll take medicines that'll help children who have malaria. And I can help cure them when they have the bad fevers that malaria causes. And I'm going to take those memory verse cards, all the memory verse cards that I got during my years at the school at Onda. I've saved them all up and they have beautiful pictures on them and verses from the Golden Book. Remember, the Golden Book is what the Karen people called the Bible. They actually had stories and almost prophecies from their ancestors that had talked about a golden book being brought by a white man to their people. And that is what now they believe, that Elder Hare and his other fellow missionaries were the white men who had brought the Bible, the Golden Book, to them. Batwe said, I'll take the memory verse cards that have the words from the Golden Book, and I'll take the medicines, and I will go and just take care of the people in Siam and tell them about God. And his father looked at him and he thought, and his father realized Batwe really meant what he said. And he said, very well, my son, you may go. God bless you. And just, when your medicine runs out, come back to us. And Batwe left, and he was gone for a month. And he was gone for 2 months and 3 months. And his father kept saying, when his medicine runs out, he'll come back. But after 6 months, Batwe had not returned. Well, around that time, about 6 months later, an old lady came to the mission station at Onda. And she came and she stood in line with all the people waiting to be seen. And she said, I want medicine. I want some medicine for the sick babies when they get a fever. Your missionary said you had some here. And the nurse, whose name was Ye Ni, said, where do you live? She said, I live in Siam. I had to travel 5 days to get here. And the nurse said, that's a long way, Grandma, to travel. But you say you had a missionary tell you this at your home in Siam? We don't have any missionaries there. And the old lady, the old grandma said, oh, yes, you do. Yes, you do. He's a tall boy. He's a tall boy with a pack on his back, and in it he has medicine for people with fevers, and he has picture cards, and he tells stories from the Golden Book. And do you know, he told us that if we ever needed medicines, we could come here and get medicines after he ran out of medicines and didn't have any for himself. It's too bad he didn't have any medicines left for himself. And Ye Ni, the nurse, realized the old lady must be talking about Batwe, who had been gone for 6 months now and who had said he was going to go as a missionary to Siam. And Ye Ni said, wait, you said it's too bad he didn't have medicines for himself. Why do you say that? Oh, he died, said the old lady. Yes, he got that malignant malaria fever and he didn't have any medicines left to take care of himself. So he died. Do you remember malignant malaria? We talked about it a week or two ago. That is what had caused Elder Baird, one of the other missionaries, to cry out in pain and turn pale when they had started cutting through the spirit tree. Remember? He had been very sick for a long time. Malignant malaria can kill you. Well, it had killed Batwe. And as news made its way around the mission school that Batwe had gone to Siam, had served the people there, and then had died, everyone was so sad. Everyone felt terrible that he had died while he was there, but then they began to realize there was something they could still do. They could still help complete Batwe's mission. And that very next Sabbath, they began to take collections at the church there in Onda, as well as word got out to some of the other Karen churches in the region. At all the Karen churches, every Sabbath, they began to collect money to send more missionaries to Siam. They said, we're going to send more Karen missionaries to Siam to finish the work that Batwe had started. And they collected money every Sabbath for 2 years until they had enough money to be able to send a missionary family to Siam to take Batwe's place. And you know who that missionary family was? It was Ye Ni, the nurse, who had first found out that Batwe had died, and her husband Kale Pa. And they went as missionaries to Siam and served there for many years, continuing on the mission that Batwe, just a young man with no extra special training, with nobody to support him, had decided to go out and serve there, and he had died there, spreading the mission story of Jesus to everyone that he met. Well, the years had gone by there in Burma. Elder Hare and his family had been serving there on and off now for a total of 20 years. And they decided now that since they had 3 children who were getting to be just around high school age, that they were going to move back to America. And that way their older kids could go to college. So they made plans to move back to America. They packed up all their belongings that they could take with them. They sold everything else that they weren't going to take with them. And they arranged to leave at 4 o'clock one morning, very early before the sun even came up, so they could get in the boat and go down the Salween River and then make their way into Rangoon, and from there be able to sail off all the way around the world across the Pacific Ocean to America. They had their plan made to leave early that morning, and as they came out quietly from their mission bungalow and stepped onto the front porch, suddenly there was a sound, and the sound was a flicking, clicking sound. And as they looked around, that sound was of people lighting candles. 300 people had come to see them off. 300 people had formed in 2 rows, a hallway of people all the way leading down to the river where their boat waited for them. Those people had come to say goodbye to the missionaries who had spent years there, missionaries that they used to be afraid of. Remember when they had first started in their project there at Onda, when they would go around to the villages, the people would run away into the jungle screaming, Dataka, Dataka. Remember, that's like a ghost demon. And they had run away from them and been scared. And now they had come. They weren't scared anymore. They wanted to be around them. They wanted to shake their hands and to wish them goodbye. These were the treasures that Elder Hare and his family had worked for so hard. One grandma caught Elder Hare by the hand there as he was walking down the line. She said, now, you know, I'm still a heathen. My daughter and granddaughter, they've become Christian. I'm still heathen, but you know, I'm not afraid of you. I want you to come back. You need to come back. You've been happy here. Elder Hare said, yes, we have been very happy here. And the old woman said, do you know why you've been happy here? Why? Said Elder Hare. Because, and she looked around and she leaned in close and whispered, because you never tried to dig up the silver bricks under the pagoda. Oh, said Elder Hare, those silver bricks. Yes, yes, I know. But do you know, there are no silver bricks underneath there. I don't believe there's anything there to actually dig up. Oh, yes, said the old lady. I know the real story. Do you know, before you came here, a few years before, a white man, he was an explorer and a miner, and he came and he did dig up the silver bricks from under the pagoda. He put them in his boat and took them back to his home downriver. But do you know, that very day he started to itch, and he would scratch his itch, and then he would itch somewhere else, and he would scratch that itch. And day by day, the itching got worse until he was constantly scratching all over. And no medicines that he would use would stop the itching until finally he went to a doctor, and one of the Karen doctors there told him, ah, yes, I've seen this before. You have haunted treasure itch. And until you put back the treasure you stole, your itching will not stop. And you know, said the old grandma, now talking to Elder Hare, you know, he tried to not take the treasure back. He tried to just wait it out, hoping the itch would stop. But the itching got worse and worse until he said, finally, treasure or no treasure, I'll die if I keep scratching this much. I must take it back. And he brought the treasure back and buried it under the pagoda. And after he did, the moment he put the last shovelful of dirt on top of the bricks, that's when his itching stopped. So I know the bricks are still there, but you never got those bricks, and that's why you were happy and did not have the haunted treasure itch. And Elder Hare smiled and leaned in close to the lady, and he said to her, well, Grandma, don't you know? Haven't you heard? Hasn't anybody ever told you? We got the treasure. You did? Said the old lady. You did? Was it silver bricks? She said. Oh, it was better than silver, said Elder Hare. There were diamonds. No, she said. And rubies. What? She said. And silver and brass and gold. Really? Yes. Would you like to see it? Said Elder Hare. Yes, yes, I would, said the grandma. And Elder Hare turned and he stretched out his arm to show the long line of people all the way down to the river, waiting to say goodbye at 4 o'clock in the morning in the jungle. And Elder Hare said, there's the treasure. There's Own Bwint and Mugtain. There's Very Tall. There's Sla Kin and Nakyati. All of them more precious than gold, Grandma. Oh, she said. And Elder Hare said, God wants you to be part of his treasure too, Grandma. He shook her hand, and as he walked off down the long line of people, he could hear the grandmother saying, I think you're right. I think you're right. Well, they got in the boat and sailed down the Salween River. As they heard the crowd singing on the riverbank, waving and calling out after them in their loudest voices, God be with you till we meet again. And Elder Hare says in his book that his voice was so choked up, he couldn't sing in reply. Well, they made it safely to America, arriving there in 1934. And they spent the next 7 years there while their kids went to school. Their older children graduated from school. Their oldest daughter got married, and they collected more brass horns along the way while they were there because they knew they'd be going back to Burma. They knew they would have more children who would want to play in the music band in the jungle. And finally, the time came for them to sail back. October of 1941, they sailed back across the Pacific Ocean, arriving in Rangoon and setting up temporarily, at least, at the school in Rangoon, which was the capital city of Burma. They were hoping still eventually to go back up to Onda at the mission station there. But the teacher, Peter, as well as the evangelist, Tam Ya-ing, had set up things very well now there at the Onda mission station. They really didn't need as much assistance. So Elder Hare and his family planned to work temporarily at the school in Rangoon, the capital city. Well, they'd only been there for a few weeks when a particular day arrived, a day which had a date of December 7, 1941. Those of you who might know about history, especially the history of World War II, know that something very important and very tragic happened on that day. That was a day that the nation of Japan, which was getting involved in the World War, decided to attack a few different bases around the Pacific, including Manila and Hong Kong and Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. And the American forces were attacked there. Many were killed. And America decided they were going to have to get deeply into the battle to force the Japanese back. Now, Burma is on the same part of the world as Japan is, pretty close by, in fact. And when the people in Rangoon heard about this attack by the Japanese, they knew this could be very dangerous for them, because if the Japanese decided they wanted to invade Burma, there was not going to be much to stop them. Well, that was December 7. 1 week later, on December 14, planes flew over Rangoon, and those planes had red circles on the underside of their wings. That was the symbol that the Japanese would put on their planes to represent their country. And when the people of Rangoon saw Japanese planes flying over Rangoon, even though there were no bombs falling, even though nobody was getting hurt so far, they knew the Japanese were planning to invade. And the people of Rangoon were so scared, they began evacuating, people packing up their things. The missionaries didn't pack up. They still were feeling they should stick around and try to help as much as they could and take care of the native people who were still learning about Jesus. So they waited to see what would happen. Many of the native people, though, left, evacuating the cities, planning to escape along the jungle trails and hopefully eventually get into India, where they would be more safe, away from the Japanese army. But even though the planes flew over on December 14, the following day, there were no planes. And then no planes on the 3rd day, or the 5th day, or the 7th day, or the 9th day, or the 10th day. And well, Elder Hare had really been wanting to go up the Salween River to see teacher Peter and evangelist Tam Ya-ing and the students at the school. And so he decided, there's nothing going on now. I guess I will travel there. And so he hired a boat to take him up the Salween River. And he was a couple hours up the river when suddenly a noise was heard, a noise coming from the sky. Started off as a faraway drone, and then it became louder as 15 planes roared overhead, following straight down the Salween River, heading towards Rangoon. And as Elder Hare looked at those planes, he saw they had red circles under their wings. They were the enemy, and they were flying right towards Rangoon, where Elder Hare had left his wife and his 2 younger children in their home there at the mission school in Rangoon. And we'll find out next week what happened when the planes got to Rangoon. It's always a pleasure telling a story to you guys. I hope you have a happy rest of your Sabbath. I look forward to seeing you next week. Don't forget, God loves you and He's watching out for you. He's taking care of all of us. Stay safe. Bye.